It is an honor to welcome you back to your alma mater. We look forward to hearing your perspective on life after Case Western Reserve University and your continued pursuit of excellence and innovation. Craig is truly one of Case Western Reserve's extraordinary graduates, and it is my great pleasure to introduce him to you. Please welcome Craig Newmark.
Folks, thanks. I really do appreciate the honor. I do want to specifically thank the students here, the faculty, and the administration. On campus, and I've only been here twice in the last 30 plus years, I am experiencing all sorts of bouts of nostalgia. It's been a long time, and well, in 30 years you may recognize how odd that kind of feeling is. Even coming up here, I remember the excitement I had at my own graduation 33 years ago. Because of the degree I had, I was first in line, and I learned what happens when the person who's supposed to push you on stage doesn't wait for the speaker to be finished. And learning how to fake it when that happens. Many of the graduates here have already been warned that even on stage I've been blogging and Twittering. Those people who don't use the internet much will realize that we do use lots of odd words. But even on the approach here, I've already blogged a few times on cnewmark.com, complimenting the precision upon which this operation was mounted, how we occupied the stage, and we're greeted as liberators. And I will be doing so when I'm done also, but I'll spare you more of that. I'll be speaking a few words about Craigslist, but only in terms of some of the observations I've made as I've done this thing for 13 years or so. And through speaking, I'm going to try to avoid telling you what you already know. That always bugs me when I listen to talks, so I'll try to stick to that one. And this tassel really isn't irritating at all. No, not at all. Whatever I do, whatever I say is informed by the notion that I am a nerd. I was a nerd in high school, wearing a plastic pocket protector, thick black glasses taped together, literally, and having the communication and social skills that come with the stereotype. But in October of 1972, and yes, I really am old, in Thwing Hall, studying for small group communication, I suddenly realized that my communications problems that I had with everyone couldn't be everyone else's problem. And so I started getting my act together, which continues today. Speaking of nostalgia, being a computer guy, I do remember being at the first floor of Crawford Hall using key punch machines in order to do my programming work. In recent years, I've joked that I've been programming so long that when I started, I had to make my own bits. But now I realize that I meant that literally using computer cards. And by the way, if you're one of the computer guys in the audience, you just found that hilarious. But the internet was starting even when I was here at school in the early 70s. Then we were on the ARPANET, which was the precursor to the net. And even then I realized somehow that this internet thing that was just starting was going to be about including everyone. When you grow up a nerd, you do feel in a small way, you learn in a small way what it feels like to be left out, to be excluded. And if you're lucky somehow, if you somehow have some kind of a moral compass, you start to think that maybe the internet is about including everyone. And that's one of the visions implicit within this Craigslist thing that I started. I do want to emphasize, given the press we have, that we are not altruistic or noble. We're not all that pious. We're just based on some common values that we pretty much all share. Somehow we have a culture of trust that we have by working with people, by seriously engaging with people. The deal is this stuff about treating people like you want to be treated, that's actually for real, and that's one of the big themes of what we've learned at Craigslist. It's that the boring stuff, the commonplace, everyday stuff, that's what matters to people. And somehow as we go through life, and especially when we get into corporations or whatever, we tend to forget that we need to give the other person a break. And sometimes the best thing you can do through the day is just live and let live. And that kind of stuff works. Again, the boring stuff, the commonplace observation, is really what most people operate with. And that actually works pretty well for all of us. There's other stuff that we learn at Craigslist, like getting out of the way is important. The first several years of Craigslist, I was pretty much running things. But when we made it into a real company, people helped me get out of denial. Frankly, as a manager, I suck. And that's why a guy named Jim Buckmaster really runs things, who's a pretty good manager. We also learned this during our response to Hurricane Katrina, where people took over our New Orleans site. People let friends and family knew where they were. People started using our site to let survivors know where they could find free housing. People were offering them free housing, and later on offering them jobs. We made sure we got out of the way. If people wanted to use our stuff in a way differently than we had intended, that was pretty good. Again, if you want to treat people like you want to be treated, well, that means provide good customer service. Again, another banal observation, but for real. And that's why my job, the way I make a living, is customer service. I was doing it 45 minutes ago. I'll be doing it again in roughly another 45 minutes. Not such a big deal, except that when you think of the last time you got customer service, maybe from the phone company or something. And rather than being annoyed about it, a lot of people are going to be in the position in companies where you actually get to influence how the corporation treats people. That ain't bad. And again, in Craigslist, we try to treat people like we want to be treated. And we've given people who use our site a lot of power over the site because we've made another trite observation. People are overwhelmingly trustworthy and good. There are crazy people out there. There are crooks out there. But you got to deal with them. But there aren't that many of them out there. Frankly, one of America's most notable newsmen, Jon Stewart, has observed that, the crazy people, the crooks, the extremists get the most attention, but that's because moderates have stuff to do. By the way, he also made one of the most important observations of the presidential campaign, that the speech on race given by Barack Obama was shocking because for 42 minutes or so, an American politician spoke to us as if we were adults. That leads to some of the required advice and observations I think I'm supposed to make as commencement speaker. There was a guy, Oscar Wilde, who said that if you want to tell people the truth, make them laugh, otherwise they'll kill you. And I didn't take enough Shakespeare here, but I do remember that wise fool stuff. A lot of you are going to be in positions, particularly people in journalism, where you're going to have to tell us stuff which we really don't want to hear. And satire does the job in a lot of important ways. Tangentially, I'll pass on some advice from the girlfriend to the human males in the audience, which is, guys, we're not often as funny as we think we are. And perhaps finally, that sometimes, you want to go ahead and change things a lot. People ask us at Craigslist why we're not interested in selling out. We don't want to sell the company. And again, we're not altruistic, but there's something I call nerd values, meaning once you make a comfortable living and maybe prepare for your future, what's the point in making more? Jim and I know some of the really rich guys in Silicon Valley. They're not any happier than any of us, and money is a burden for them. But what you got to do sometimes, instead of trying to make big change, is focus on the doable. There are people who mean to do good out in the world, sometimes derisively called do-gooders, and you'll find that there are people who know how to do stuff and actually change things, and sometimes there are people with good intentions but don't know how to do stuff, they don't get traction, and you got to pick your battles. This comes to the kind of favor that I'd like to ask of people. That's the bad news. The good news is that if I trust what I read in the news and surveys done, say, by the Pew people or whatever, you guys are already doing this stuff. The idea is that I think 2008 is a big year in American history. People are using the internet in a lot of big ways to promote civic engagement and like actual democracy. And I don't mean democracy as an excuse to do whatever you want. I mean democracy in the sense of giving people a break. Like, there's new kinds of philanthropy which are being implemented on the net right now. There's something called Donors Choose. Teachers tell you what money they need for what classroom projects, and you get to fund those classroom projects directly with accountability. There's essentially no middleman between you and some kids getting a better education. You may remember that from the Colbert Show, where he tied Donors Choose into his failed presidential bid. By the way, Colbert being the other most notable of America's newsmen these days. Again, on the theme of boring stuff being really important, customer service is a good example of where you're actually giving people a break, you're helping people out. And many of the folks here, maybe the MBAs, will be going into companies where customer service only gets lip service. And frankly, from what I've seen, if you get put into management and customer service, they're sending you a message about your career. And it's not a good one. But we can change those things. And again, give people a break. Treat them like you want to be treated. This ain't bad. Another message, especially in light of the way things are going to change next January 20th, is that public service. We used to think about it, let's say in the days of Kennedy, as a noble calling. Well, that's going to change and happen again. There's going to be a lot, I hear from career people in government throughout the country that, well, a lot of career people have left public service, which means there's going to be a lot of challenges and a lot of opportunities in public service. For example, for those graduating from the law school, they're going to need a lot of competent, honest lawyers in Washington starting soon. And again, this is really a noble service. Frankly, since sometimes I'm invited to conferences where I'm a notable oddity, I get to speak to people in Washington, including a lot of politicians. I caught a glimpse of how the sausage is made, and it needs a lot of work. That's going to start happening soon, and they're going to need a lot of that help. The idea is that I've been looking carefully at what's been happening in the presidential primaries. Forget about the politics. What's important is that for the first time we've seen a lot of new people registering to vote and actually voting, participating in large numbers in these primaries. This is a big deal because for the first time in many decades, we've seen that as individuals working together, we can actually make some serious change. The difference is that the internet allows us to connect, whether it's through Facebook, MySpace, or a lot of other places. People, and particularly the kids, are getting together to actually make something happen, and that's been pretty rare in America over the last decades. The deal is that people are really doing things. The bad news is that right now it's only about half of people who are, let's say, 18 to 30. I'd like to ask the rest of you to start getting involved to try to make a difference, because for the first time, we do actually get to make a difference. One last observation, again from my college Shakespeare. Brevity is the soul of wit. You'll learn that in the opposite way as you go through companies and corporations. But as for me, folks, I appreciate your time and attention. I'm going to follow my own advice right now, and thanks. Do I get to sit down now? Okay.
Thank you, Craig, for your words today, for your pioneering work. We are grateful for the impact you have made on our university and across the nation, and we will look forward to seeing you back on our campus soon.